Hey, it's Luxury Travel Docs here, and welcome to Buenos Aires, Argentina. We arrived here 3 nights ago, and we stayed at the Park Hyatt Hotel in the Recoleta neighborhood of Buenos Aires. We boarded the Viking Jupiter yesterday, and we had an all-day tour of Buenos Aires today. We were on the maiden voyage of Viking Jupiter after the pandemic, where we went to Iceland and did the itinerary called Iceland's Natural Beauty in July of 2021. Now we're on the Viking Jupiter again for the itinerary South America and the Chilean fjords from Buenos Aires to Santiago, Chile, and we're heading around the tip of South America. Just a reminder that all proceeds from our channel are donated to charity. Please help us help others by giving us a thumbs up or subscribing to our channel. Your support makes a difference. So let's get to it. We found Patrick Watts through our Cruise Critic community roll call, and we had a group of about 36 people from the Viking Jupiter who did the Patrick Watts tour in the Falkland Islands. We organized a group of us to get off the Viking Jupiter on the same tender, and that was at the advice of Patrick Watts. We paid about $190 per person for this tour today, which was significantly less than what the Viking Jupiter was offering. I would say all in all, there are about 70 to 80 people total here at Volunteer Point at the moment. That's probably going to be the total amount for the day. We had, with the Patrick Watts tour, again, 36 of us, and the others are on a Viking Jupiter tour. If you take this tour, you will have about 1.5 hours through significantly rough terrain where you're essentially going in Land Rovers through peat bogs. So if you have a tendency towards motion sickness, you should take your motion sickness medication before you leave. The sail into Port Stanley in the Falkland Islands was beautiful at sunrise. A member of our Cruise Critic community arranged for us to take the first tender off the Viking Jupiter in the morning. Hey, it's Luxury Travel Docs here, and we are in the Falkland Islands down near the most southern point of South America. We have a private tour scheduled today with Patrick Watts, and we've already made it to land on a tender from the Viking Jupiter, so we'll bring you lots of information about the Falkland Islands today, which is a very interesting location. Patrick Watts arranged for us to meet the group of tour guides right at the pier. Our guide was David, who was a Falkland Islands native, and he had his own Land Rover that we had 4 of us sit in easily. Since one of us is prone to motion sickness, that person sat in the front seat. With David. You will drive on paved roads at first, and during this time, your tour guide will orient you to some of the important locations for the Falkland Islands War. The war began in 1982, and our tour guide David was the age of 8 when the war began. Much of the conflict took place in the mountains that are surrounding Port Stanley, and those are mostly named like the Two Sisters mountains that you're seeing in view right now. It's interesting to note that even though there is a peace treaty between the United Kingdom and Argentina, there still appears to be a great deal of animosity between the two territories. For example, Argentina and most of Latin America call the Falkland Islands the Malvinas. Next, you will have about 30 minutes on gravel roads, and fortunately these gravel roads are very level and it is a very steady ride. You'll have a chance to go to the bathroom right before we start getting into the peat bogs at a beautiful farm on a lake, and it's a great opportunity to look around, stretch your legs, and of course, go to the bathroom. Then the fun starts when you start to traverse the farm and the peat bogs in your 4x4 vehicles like us in the Land Rover. This part can last 1.5 to 2 hours and is a very bumpy ride. The duration of this part is really dependent upon how much rain they've had recently in the islands. If the ground is wetter and muddier, this can take over 2 hours. But fortunately for us, the ground was dry and it only took about an hour and a half. We have a few tips for this, so if you're prone to motion sickness, you may want to take some motion sickness medicine before you leave on this trip. If you have spine problems, this may not be the tour for you because there's a lot of jostling that happens in that ride across the farm. As soon as you arrive at Volunteer Point, you will start seeing penguins right away.
Quarter to 12, back of the cars, please. Okay, so there you go. Quarter to 12, back of the vehicles. Yeah. We're going to go, you do your wash your feet, get in the vehicle, and go and park up.
You have to sanitize the soles of your shoes before you can enter the colony, and you will have to sanitize again before you leave. This is to prevent transmitting illnesses to and from the colonies. King penguins are what we wanted to see the most, and we walked over to them right away, and they are spectacular. King penguins are the second largest type of penguins on the earth. The only larger penguin are emperor penguins. The males and female look identical, with the males being slightly larger. They can grow up to 35 inches in height and live for over 25 years. They are distinguished by the teardrop yellow-orange markings behind their eye and the splash of yellow feathers on their chest.
Checked out the water while we were down at the ocean to see what the penguins were going through as they went in the water. The water temperature here is about 8 degrees Celsius, which I believe, if you do the calculations, is about 46 degrees Fahrenheit. So a little chilly, but a beautiful day and just an incredible experience.
Of course, my own little cold water swimmer had to check out the temperature of the surf to see what the penguins were getting into. We were delighted and surprised to see a group of penguins heading toward the sea, foraging for food. It was really interesting watching their behavior. The group seemed to follow 2 sentinel penguins that were looking out for any type of danger to the group. When the 2 sentinel penguins moved, the rest of the group moved. When the 2 sentinel penguins stopped, they all stopped. This one seems to have hit a snag by getting his foot stuck in a little bit of dried kelp. Finally, the group thought it was safe to enter the water, and one by one, they went into the ocean. But their swim didn't last long because off in the distance, we saw a seal nearby, and penguins are prey for seals. They quickly returned from the surf to the safety of the beach. There are wardens throughout the colony preventing you from approaching the penguins too closely. You're asked to stay 2 meters away from the penguins, but if a penguin approaches you, you may get closer to them, and they do approach you. This is such a cute pair that are apparently worn out from the activities of the day. Then we walked over to the colony of king penguins, which are clearly marked by the wardens with groups of stones. It's interesting that the penguins know to stay within that area. King penguins do not build nests. They actually cradle incubating eggs in a small pouch between their feet, as well as the newly born hatchlings. This pouch is called a brood pouch, and you can see it clearly on this penguin walking here. You'll see chicks of all different ages present in the colony, and they're very distinctive because their feathers are not colorful and usually just a brown color. You have to look closely as the colony gets dense in the center, but you may see adult penguins preening their young. Because of the large size of king penguins, the chicks are usually not ready to enter the water for at least a year. We really enjoyed the king penguins where they just had their hatchlings and were caring for the little baby king penguins, and we're going to see some gentoo penguins and some Magellanic penguins. This has really been an awesome day. It's a little bumpy ride to get here, but we're so grateful that we had great weather and that we were able to come out here to Volunteer Point. We're off to see the gentoo penguins, and this colony was much smaller as most of the breeding season had already passed. Gentoo penguins have distinct orange beaks and orange feet. They also have a cap of white feathers behind their eyes, and they can get up to about 30 inches tall. They are the third largest species of penguins on Earth. Their populations are growing, but they are still a protected species by the Antarctica Treaty. Gentoo penguins mainly eat krill and shrimp. The chicks will molt their feathers before they head to sea, and this little chick was actually very curious about me.
He likes me.
He came very close
Hi.
and stood
I'm
there
not
watching
gonna
me
feed you.
for quite a while.
Oh!
Most of this colony had already head back to sea.
Not that kind of girl.
This has really just been a fabulous day at Volunteer Point. We are here on Valentine's Day, and the number of baby penguins that we've seen today for the king penguins and the gentoo penguins has really been incredible. I highly recommend coming here. You'll just see, here I am just walking from one group of penguins to the next, and easily see a penguin just sitting there in a hole right there next to me. So it's a very interesting place to be. Again, we found the Patrick Watts tour company through our cruise critic community, and I highly recommend trying to organize a tour with the Patrick Watts group, and really you'll talk with Patrick himself over the email, who communicates very well. I would highly recommend that you go on a tour with him if you come to the Falkland Islands. We paid $190 per person for about a 7 to 8 hour excursion through the peat bogs to get to Volunteer Point. And really, other than helicopter, that's the only way you can get here to Volunteer Point. It's just a beautiful location, and again, A+++ for this tour today. Then we were on to see the Magellan penguins, and honestly, they are located throughout the entire colony. Their nests are made in burrows in the ground, and you have to be very careful not to collapse one when you're walking around, because sometimes you may not recognize that you're standing on top of a burrow and a penguin may be inside. We wouldn't recommend spending a lot of time seeing the Magellan penguins on your Patrick Watts tour, because you may see them at other stops on this itinerary. Hey, it's Luxury Travel Docs here, and we are in the Falkland Islands at Volunteer Point. We were able to see Magellanic penguins, king penguins, and gentoo penguins. The king penguins have just had their babies, so we were delighted to see the new hatchlings with their moms and see a bunch of the king penguins walking into the ocean. This was our personal vehicle, and there's our driver David, and then it became time for us to head back through the farm and the peat bog back to Port Stanley. We had another 2-hour drive in the Land Rover ahead of us. This went fairly quickly as we talked about the excitement of the day, more of the history of the Falkland Islands or the Malvinas, and more about the Falklands War. We hope you've enjoyed our review of the Patrick Watts tour to Volunteer Point in the Falkland Islands. Always remember to make meaningful and healthy travel happen. We hope you've enjoyed our reviews of the Viking Jupiter. Please look for more of them on our YouTube channel, and thanks again for supporting us. We'll see you next time.